Back here in home in Prince George's County, the man accused of murdering 19-year-old Dacara Thompson is due in court today.
4 words, a plain text message that was sent at 11:47 p.m. the 22nd of August 2024. The type of message which is read and forgotten in seconds. However, the father would live to regret the rest of his life uttering these 4 words, since they were the last he would ever hear again of his 19-year-old daughter, Dacara Thompson. What came next cannot be understood. This bright young woman would be dead in a few hours, killed by a stranger in such a random and senseless way that the reality that it is a frightening thing, that safety is merely an illusion, would be revealed. This is how Dacara Thompson's story starts with a normal text and ends with the question that will haunt us all. How does an innocent journey to obtain gas turn into an experience with pure evil? Dacara Thompson was not expected to die at the age of 19. She was expected to transform the world. She just left St. Charles High School and had already discovered her mission here in the county of Prince George, serving a non-profit organization and spending her youth to do good. When other teenagers of her age were still in confusion of who she was and where she was heading, Dacara was sure of where she was heading and who she was. She was the daughter who used to send texts to her father when out, the young lady who had chosen to serve and not to be selfish, the type of individual who influenced everyone around her to think that there is something good. None of that was important, though, on the night of August 22nd, 2024, since evil has no discrimination. It does not give a thought to whatever your dreams are, what kind you are, or what you could be. Evil simply hunts. Next, what occurs would be examined frame by the investigators, dissection by forensic experts, and replaying in the courtrooms. However, no analysis can answer the haunting question: why did Dacara go to that vehicle? In the video, she walks straight to the driver window of the car. There is a short parlay, her lips are moving, we can tell the driver is answering her. Then, in an instant that dooms her, she opens the door on the passenger side and gets into the car. The SUV drives off into the night, and Dacara Thompson is being driven to a fate that cannot be imagined. 5 minutes before she would disappear permanently, Dacara sent this last message to her father at 11:47 p.m. Going to get gas. However, this is what investigators would eventually find out. There was no gas station that she was getting to. The closest station was in the opposite direction. So where was she really going? And why was she lying to the person she loved best? The questions are like cancer cells, and everyone is more repulsive than the other. Did she know her killer? Was it an intended meeting that failed? Or did she happen to be in the wrong place at the time a monster was stalking the streets and was a mere victim of opportunity? When Dacara failed to arrive home that night, the family of Dacara was in a state of catastrophe. It was not a girl who vanished without a reason. This was not a person who had forgotten to make a call home. The report of the missing person had been filed by August 24th. Her photo broke social media, a young woman who is beautiful and who has all her life ahead of her, and who was turned into a hashtag and a desperate cry to find out anything. Her family spent 13 days in the purgatory of hope and horror. Each telephone call may be the one that would bring her home. Each bang on the door may be the police with crushing news. They posted flyers. They conducted search parties. They were praying to a God who appeared to have listened no longer.
She was missing for almost 2 weeks before her body was found in neighboring Anne Arundel County. That's
September 5th, 2024. A disabled vehicle on Route 50 in Anne Arundel County. The incident that was meant to be a normal traffic stop turned out to be the occasion that broke a family. A discovery made by the Maryland State Police officers who responded to the call would haunt them for the rest of their career. Lying in the brush beside the road, they discovered what was left of Dacara Thompson. The autopsy would reveal later the real horror of how she died. Skull fractures, facial fractures, injuries so grave they talked of rage, of violence which human understanding could not conceive. Dacara Thompson had been murdered with a brutality that defied understanding. The monster. His name is Hugo Hernandez Mendez, but this fact appears to be nearly insignificant when one speaks about a person who preferred to become a predator. He was 27 years old, and it was not the first time that law enforcers knew about him. A man lacking in wise choices and being prone to dangerous impulses. Nothing in his past, however, could have foreshadowed what he was going to be on the night of the 22nd of August. The inquiry would disclose a terrifying likeness of a man who had been concealing himself beneath his nose. It was on the same evening, just across the street, that he would meet Dakara, that he had been at Galaxy nightclub. Was he there by coincidence, or was he hunting? The evidence indicates that he was a predator, and he had located his prey. The GMC Yukon Denali, which was black in color, was traced to the house of Hernandez Mendez in Cambridge Drive, Bowie. The trail of evidence that was found after police were allowed warrants to search his home, and his vehicle gave a terrible image of how the last hours of Dakara must have been. His bedroom had blood evidence. One cannot even think of it without turning his stomach. This was not a passion murder that was soon over. This was much more diabolical, a drawn-out nightmare which was foamed at the mouth in the domestic chambers of a murderer. Further blood traces in his SUV, which investigators had thought based on the surveillance video. Dakara had entered that car alive. She had left it dead. Still, what was possibly the most upsetting part of the evidence was what it told about the killer mentality. This wasn't random violence. This was calculated, methodical, the labor of a man who had thought this. It is at this point the story gets even darker. Hugo Hernandez Mendez must never have been on the loose, and he was the one who murdered Dacara Thompson on the night. He had already been caught by U.S. Park Police on DUI, but was set free. A man with his record of bad judgment and risky actions should have been held longer in a working system. But the system is ineffective, as it so frequently proves, and one of the predators was brought back into the streets to prey once more. Worse still, the federal authorities had placed a detainer on him, indicating that he had immigration problems and he should not have been on the streets. But somehow, he was at liberty to roam at night, to meet a young innocent woman, to ruin the world of a family. These failures are like dominoes, as one leads to the other, all of which would inevitably lead to that point when the life of Dacara Thompson would be met with violence and terror. Hugo Hernandez Mendez did not deny that he was with Dacara Thompson when he was arrested by the police over the murder. He was not saying that he was innocent and he was sorry. Investigators say that he merely accepted what was already evidenced. He admitted that Dakara had been in his car, in his house, and that she had been killed in his house. Cold calculation of his reaction showed something that was maybe even more shocking than the act of crime itself. There was no human empathy in him at all. It was not a man who was plagued by his actions. It was a predator that considered his victim as a simple object to be utilized and thrown away.
First and second degree murder charges for the murder of 19-year-old Dacara Thompson. Now, guys, it was this past Friday when Prince George's County Police announced the arrest and charge.
Hernandez Mendez was taken to court October 8th during his preliminary hearing. The perpetrator of the destruction of so many lives was silently watching prosecutors present their case. A case that was supported by surveillance tapes, DNA material, and the gut-wrenching testimony of a family seeking answers. He was ordered to remain behind bars, a decision that brought little comfort to those who loved Dakara. No amount of legal proceedings could bring her back. No verdict could undo the horror of her final moments. But for her family, the court proceedings represented something crucial, the possibility that her killer would never be free to hunt again. Although Hernandez Mendez is in custody, there are some basic questions to be addressed. What was the reason for Dakara approaching his vehicle? Why did she decide to get inside? Did he seduce her with words, or was she in some way forced into it? The police have not said much on possible reasons behind the act, and the people are left to guess about the events that made this such a stupid tragedy. Was this an identity mistake, a robbery gone wrong, or something still worse, the cold-blooded hunting of an innocent prey? The lack of investigators in the case is both explainable and frustrating. As they strive to create an airtight case, the family and friends of Dakara are uncertain of not only who killed her, but why. There is more than just the personal tragedy of the murder of Dacara Thompson. There is also an implication on the failure of the systems designed to protect her. What was the number of warning signals disregarded? How had so many chances been lost to put a dangerous man on the streets? This is not the first time that Hernandez Mendez is arrested on DUI. This should have made him be detained by their immigration status. His release should not have been allowed by the federal detainer. However, systemic failures, understaffing, and bureaucracy were the ingredients to the perfect storm that put a predator and his victim together at the right place at the right time. Dacara Thompson was not killed as a result of a single man opting to become evil, and as a result, it is not her fault, but the negligence of several systems. Dacara Thompson had died at the age of 19. She had served a nonprofit, and her young life was devoted to service to others. She sent a text to her father when she went out, since she was a good daughter who knew that love entailed not to lose touch. She ought to have lived to make the change of the world. As opposed to that, the world transformed her as an intelligent young lady with a bright future into a warning story of how dangerous the shadows can be. Her murder reminds us of an uncomfortable truth, that evil exists, that it hunts among us, and that innocence is no protection against predators who have abandoned their humanity. Ultimately, the case of Dacara Thompson being murdered is not simply another true crime case. It is a reflection of what our society has failed to do, how we fail to keep dangerous individuals off the streets, how we fail to defend the innocent, how we accept the type of tragedies that could be avoided as something unavoidable. Her death ought to arouse indignation. It should demand reform. It must compel us to pose tough questions on how we shall create a world where a young woman can text her father on how to get gas, yet that message turns into an epitaph.
They believe the 35-year-old took 19-year-old Dacara Thompson back to his Bowie home and murdered her.
And above all, it must make us remember that behind each headline, there is a human being who has a right to live, to love, to achieve his or her dreams. It was a man who decided to make himself a monster that deprived Dacara Thompson of her future. We should at least not forget her name nor stop her memory and do all we can to make sure that her death was not in vain.